Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for coming along today. I am sorry that it is me presenting today and not Emma Lyons, but I will do my best to fill in for her and fill her shoes. I am delighted to have with me today Claire McDonald, who is a clinical neuropsychologist and founder of Neuro in Nature, who's going to be talking to us today about forest therapy, which I think everybody will be really interested to find out about. So first of all, Claire, what does forest therapy involve?
So broadly speaking, forest therapy is a practice that supports and promotes our physical and mental well-being through nature connection. So the term forest therapy is sometimes used interchangeably with forest bathing, which can freak people out a little bit because they might assume it involves taking your clothes off or going swimming, and it completely doesn't. So it translates from the Japanese Shinrin Yoku, which means immersing yourself in the forest air. So forest therapy essentially involves a slow, gentle, mindful walk in nature where we just pay really close attention to our surroundings through our senses. So a typical session might involve spending a little time understanding about the benefits of forest bathing, but then we would go on to, I suppose, have the rest of the session in silence or as much quietness as possible. And a forest therapy guide would kind of offer prompts or suggestions or invitations, as we call them, to help guide people to pay attention to their senses. So we might notice what we can see, the different colors of green, different shapes, notice what we can hear, touch, smell. So it is about slowing down and kind of really being present in natural surroundings. And those prompts are really important because we're trying to really reduce the opportunities for those kind of rumination processes. And, you know, how many of us have gone for a walk but not actually been present? We've been thinking of kind of what we need to do. So the aim of the prompts and the suggestions are to really help people slow down and kind of connect with their senses. And then we might do some kind of creative activities or engage with our sense of imagination. So we might make some, I guess, forage for some things from, you know, the natural environment and create shapes and patterns. And again, they're all designed to help people notice and connect and slow down. And then we usually end with a beautiful tea ceremony. So this is my colleague Mary's sort of favorite part, where we get to feed people. We offer tea, usually made by sort of foraged leaves or maybe mint leaves from our garden. And again, it's another opportunity to connect with our senses and to really benefit with what nature has to offer. But it's just a bit of an opportunity to connect socially before going back to the rat race usually. So that's what a typical session really entails.
I see. Are you a massively outdoors person? Is that how you got into this area?
I mean, a massively outdoorsy person wouldn't be how I describe myself. You won't really catch me up a mountain or on a marathon unless I'm being chased. But I suppose kind of growing up in the Northern Irish countryside, I did spend a lot of time outdoors, digging up worms in the garden with my granddad. But it's probably fair to say that throughout my teens and early 20s, I was massively disconnected from nature. I was focusing on work, career, social relationships. It didn't really feature in my life. And then after having my son, I was aware that I wanted to be outdoors more. But again, it was more about doing in nature rather than being in nature. So again, getting in the steps, you know, feeling that I needed to go somewhere, not really noticing what was around me. And I think as we discussed, Ben, it was COVID that kind of really shifted my relationship with nature. So personally, just feeling the benefit of those breaks away from the relentless screen time, the opportunity to sit out in the garden and kind of really hear the birds for the first time compared to when all the planes were going overhead. So that was a massive sort of key observation for me. And then alongside that, when we started to do the sort of socially distanced walks with clients, I really noticed a change in the regulation and how my clients were outdoors with me. So not only was I feeling better, I was noticing real positives in how they were engaging in the sessions. So that prompted myself and my colleague to kind of look at the science behind it And then we discovered this forest bathing, forest therapy, and so we trained as accredited forest therapy practitioners. So that's kind of the story behind it. But yeah, not massively outdoorsy, more nature connected, I would say.
And obviously, as you're introducing this to clients, that there must be an evidence base that it rests upon. Can you talk a little bit about that, Claire?
Yeah, completely. And some people are more skeptical than others about kind of going outdoors and connecting with nature. But I think most of us intuitively have a sense that spending time outdoors and connecting with nature is good for us. But the evidence base really is quite breathtaking when you take the time to sort of explore it. And a lot of that research, I suppose, comes from Japan and Korea, where forest bathing and Shinrin-yoku was first identified and promoted by the government back in the 80s as the antidote to tech-based burnout. And that was back in the 80s. If only they could see us now. But there is a whole massive body of research from around the world looking at different clinical populations, looking at the physiological benefits, the mental health benefits, and even the cognitive benefits. So in terms of what we know about the physiological benefits, forest therapy has been found to reduce heart rate, blood pressure, increased heart rate variability, which is kind of seen as a measure of, I guess, good immune system functioning. So the kind of higher our heart rate variability, the kind of more time we're spending in our parasympathetic nervous system, so our rest and digest system, which is really important for physical health and well-being. In terms of our stress levels, again, research has found reduced kind of stress hormones, cortisol within the body after spending time in nature, improved kind of respiratory benefits for those with COPD, and reduced experiences of pain. So there's lots and lots of evidence out there around the physiological benefits, and psychologically as well. Lots and lots of research has talked about the improved self-reports of sort of mood, symptoms of depression, stress, anxiety, and workplace burnout. And again, this research kind of correlates with some of the fMRI research. So there was an RCT, they sent people out on a nature walk versus a sort of walk around a built up urban area, and they looked at the kind of functional activity of the brain, and those that had spent time outdoors, there was reduced activation of the amygdala, so our kind of brain's threat system, but also evidence of reduced blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, which was associated with their reports of reduced rumination as well. So there really is quite compelling evidence about the benefits of nature, and also in terms of cognition as well. Research has highlighted improvements to sort of working memory, flexibility, and creativity. So yeah, I could ramble on about the evidence for ages, but yeah, it's so convincing that the Japanese government kind of now prescribe it, as they kind of suggest that people spend a minimum of 2 hours a month really immersed in nature, just because of the preventative kind of health benefits. And I think we would all benefit from that, really.
I'm no doubt about that at all. So given that you're introducing people with a wide range of abilities to this, you must be used to tailoring it to people with different mobility needs, I guess, Claire.
Yeah, so I guess within the context of Neuro and Nature, where we are supporting people with neurological conditions to connect with nature, we do think a lot about the access, and that, in England, access is a huge issue. There's 20% of the population can't access their local green spaces and countrysides because of things like poor access to kind of car parking spaces, no accessible toilets, those weird little stiles and kissing fences and things. They're huge, huge problems. And so we try to select locations that are accessible for wheelchairs. We do a risk assessment of the paths. We talk with the individual and kind of find out what are their preferences, what do they feel safe with, and if they want us to engage with a physio or OT to kind of discuss any adaptations or seats or things that will be helpful for them, we're happy to do that also. But I think we want to promote the message that nature connection doesn't have to be about going outdoors and sitting in a park or sitting in a forest. It can be looking out your window. It can be, spending time kind of, noticing plants and, kind of even accessing pictures online, smells. There's lots of research that kind of says even when you isolate a sense, so there are certain oils like cypress oils that again are found to have really helpful benefits. But there's been some research done with the University of Derby as well that have looked at the benefits of online forest bathing interventions for people with long COVID and spinal cord injuries. And the results again are incredibly positive: decreased anxiety, decreased rumination, and a sense of kind of social connection as well. But obviously the ideal is that we just make green spaces more accessible to those with mobility issues. But yeah, we try and go the extra mile to make sure that we are, making our sessions as accessible as possible.
Yeah, and I suppose that leads into what I was going to ask you next, because I was going to ask how do people access forest therapy for themselves, and I think you've already alluded to some possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, so if people are curious about it, I would encourage people to access websites like the Forestry England website, where there is this 360 immersive, beautiful videos of forest environments. So if you have 5 minutes at work and you just want a little bit of a breather, you can go and explore that. But it also has some really helpful information and tips about how to begin connecting with your senses. And if, for parents of young children, different activities and things that you can do with your kids to kind of promote a bit of nature connection and awareness of natural environments as well. In terms of attending a forest therapy or a forest bathing session, if you're anything like me, you can do it yourself. Watching a YouTube video, I kind of think of it a bit like yoga. You can stick on a YouTube video and try it at home, but I find that my mind wanders and I will find something else to think about or something else to do completely. So having a guide, I think for someone starting out is really, really important. And then you will just gradually notice, and the more you kind of practice it, the more you will notice. So people can, I guess, just have a bit of a Google of their local events on Eventbrite, and you can see if someone is an accredited forest therapy practitioner on there. But also websites like the Forest Bathing Institute and even the National Trust website also have lists of events. But usually, just putting in your area in Eventbrite will bring up a kind of host of opportunities in your area, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's really helpful, and I guess there's there'll be information about your organization as well online.
Of course, yes. So I will send you some information, Ben, and yes, so people can kind of connect with our social media at Neuro in Nature. So we're on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we also have a website that if people want to sign up to our newsletter as well, we can kind of send regular information and ideas as well to support nature connection.
One last thing, because we've got a strict time limit. I think we can just squeeze in. I was just going to ask you about research you're doing yourself in this area, because it is a fascinating area that you're working in.
Massively. And there are a whole host of clinicians in the UK doing really, really fascinating research and developing their services with nature connection in mind. And we've just spent a whole weekend with other neuro rehab professionals kind of talking about nature connection, and it was wonderful. But the main theme was the importance of research in sharing ideas, disseminating findings, and convincing commissioners and stakeholders to fund these kinds of services and interventions. So yeah, we're fortunate enough to be being supervised by an associate professor Kirsten McEwen at the University of Derby, who's helping us kind of think about how we can collect kind of quantitative data, so things like heart rate variability, but also qualitative feedback from the sessions and the programs that we're planning to offer. So yeah, watch this space, but yeah, definitely committed to the research side because we want the money. No, not really.
That's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you ever so much, Claire. We have hit our 15 minutes. I could have gone on for quite a lot longer. I had plenty more questions to ask you, but we have to be strict about it. So thanks again for your time. It was a brilliant session, and I will see everybody again soon. Cheers now.
Thank you.
Bye.